The Redbreast is definitely my most personal story because I grew up in a family that had a history from the Second World War, and the novel is part of it is taking place during the Second World War. One side of my family sympathized with the Germans, or were anti-Stalin, and they also fought with the Germans on the East Front, while the other side of my family, they were in the resistance movement, fighting against the occupants, the German occupants. So I had when I grew up in a family where we talked about war and discussed the war, and also discussed history writing, that the winners will always be the ones writing history and writing it for their own purpose. And so The Redbreast was a story not only about the characters that's in the book, but also about the Norwegian society and the Norwegian people, how different individuals chose differently during the war and what price they had to pay after the war for their choices, wrong or right. So I think it's a book where I wanted not only to write a crime story, I wanted not only to entertain, but also to write about a part of Norwegian history that is very important, both to me and still to many people in Norway. In my first two novels, The Batman and Cockroaches, I'd used sort of a single camera. It was a single camera production where you could see everything through the eyes of Harry Hole. In The Redbreast, I sort of had to manage a whole orchestra of viewpoints and cameras. So it was a sort of a big production, and it was very exciting for me because I sort of knew that I could manage this now. I had the skills and I had the overview, but it was at a certain point. I think I felt like Francis Ford Coppola shooting Apocalypse Now, that you just wanted to leave, that you got crazy and I can't do this. So I sort of panicked there at a point during the writing. But then I pulled myself together and I knew that, okay, this is maybe the most important story that I'm ever going to write. And in the end, I think I pulled it off pretty well. So that's a story that I'm really happy with. I did a lot of research, interviewing people, and when you're doing research, sometimes you are not only looking for the long lines and the overview, but you are looking for details to find that those small grains of gold. And I can remember interviewing a guy who had been on the East Front, and he told me about the German helmets, that when you were looking over the trenches, the wind would blow in the helmet, and so you would get this very irritating sound in your ear because of the wind and the helmet, and you would get very tempted to take off your helmet. And that was a sort of a detail. I mean, I've read a lot about the Second World War. Most people have seen many movies, and you found that little detail that you had never heard about, and that was, so it told a story about the everyday life of the soldier on the East Front. And when you hear details like that, you just know that, okay, that's perfect. That's going to be in the book. And it was probably the first time that I realized that doing research for my novels is one of the most pleasant things I do, because up to that point I had been so happy with the writing. I felt so lucky just being allowed to spend so much time with my laptop just writing stories, that I had forgotten about the joy of doing research. In the Redbreast, I introduced, or I developed a character that was introduced in Cockroaches. But this is the first novel where he has a main part, and that is Tom Waller. And he is a person that will follow Harry for the next few novels. And I knew at that point that this would be a series. This wouldn't be the last book about Harry Hole. And so I also started to plant seeds that would develop into other stories. I don't think that the Redbreast would be the same book if I wrote it today. I don't think books can be the same if you write them at a later point in your life. My experience is that when you look over your shoulder, you see that there are so many aspects of your personal life that you put into the story. You may not be conscious about it at the time, but when you look back, it's so obvious. So since my life is different now, the book probably wouldn't be the same. On the other hand, I'm so happy with the result that I'm very happy now that I wrote it at that point in time and that I don't have to read it or write it now, because I'm happy with the result.